the testimony that you have. All right, we also have an honorary guest, as has already been alluded to. Liandro Arellano, the mayor of Dixon, is going to come up and he's going to share some words with us, and we're so excited that he's taken time. I know he's very busy, and I know today I put some stress on him to get here, but we do appreciate you being here and taking the time. Feel welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to come out. For those who don't know me, my name is Liandro Arellano. I'm a local business owner, mayor of Dixon currently, going on 2 years now. And I'm going to take some time to share a little bit about this from two different vantage points. One, a little bit of my experience with it, and the other is kind of a government outlook on it to some degree. And certainly at the municipal level, we don't have much control over this, but we do get influenced by some of the decisions that come down for it. So I'll start off by a little bit about talking about rights. In the government, we deal quite constantly with rights, the right to free speech, the right to property, the right to bear arms. And at the municipal level, it can get pretty technical, right? Your right to property extends so far, but if you want to build a fence within 10 feet of your neighbor's property line, your right to own property can be infringed by your neighbor's right to whatever the case may be. And I share some of these boring details to tell you that one of the keys to all of this is the right to life. What does it matter if you have the right to bear arms, if you have the right to petition your government, if you don't have the right to life? What is the right to property worth? What is free speech worth if you don't have the right to life? It is the core right from which everything else flows. So I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I want to backtrack a little and talk a little bit about some of my experiences with this. For those who don't know, I went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I originally thought I was going to be a doctor, so I was going pre-med, excellent medical school. I graduated high school in 1999, so I started there in the fall of 1999. And I didn't know it at the time when I was picking it, but the University of Michigan was the center of something going on that was pretty big in biology, and it was called the Human Genome Project. So for those who know a little bit about genetics and DNA, it's pretty much the blueprint for who we are, who our identity is biologically as a human being. In your DNA strands, they can tell you while you're still growing in the womb what color your hair is going to be. They even believe when they get really good at it, they can say, oh, you're going to be at high risk for a heart attack at age 35, and here are your various stressors. It's really incredible stuff. They can tell you your eye color. So this was being done by much smarter people than me at that university, so it was interesting getting constant updates to what was going on in the Human Genome Project. And I got really familiar with the idea that, by the time conception is done, and conception takes many hours, up to over 24 hours, but by the time that process is done, that unique individual human life is established. They can tell you some of those factors about that human being's individual identity, biological identity at that point in time. So it was interesting to me as I got in debates after that, and people would say, well, when does life begin? And they would try to use various arguments. Well, when does the heart start beating? Well, when are they viable? Various other arguments like that. None of that mattered. We knew that they were a human being by that unique gene pool, by that unique DNA of theirs. We knew when that process finished, when it no longer was cells from the mother and cells from the father, it was its own unique human being. And it's relatively quickly after the process of conception is done. Like I said, it's many hours as that cells merge. But well within a week, that process is fully done, lined up, and I got to read about it, and I was interested at the time. I'm less interested now as I branched away from medicine, so I hope I'm not boring anyone. But I was very interested at the time reading about it. It was fascinating. So I want to tie this back to the concept of the right to life, the right to free speech, property, bear arms. To me, for a very long time, I think science has established that it is human, no doubt about it, human genetics, human DNA, established that it's life. It's been alive for this whole process. In fact, at no point in the process is anything dead. It was alive the whole time. So the life question is never there. The human question is never there. So really, there is no question about whether it is human life. The question is, at what point are we going to give it basic human rights as a unique human being? And that's one of the things I want you to leave. If you get nothing else from what I say today, the question of when human life begins, there is no question there. It was human life all along. Don't let anybody tell you there's a debate over when human life begins. There really isn't. The question is, when are we as a society and as governments going to recognize the basic human rights of a new human life? That should be the question. If somebody ever tries to derail you with when does human life begin, tell them, man, we established that. They maybe didn't know in 70s when they did Roe v. Wade. They didn't know then. They'll try to tell you. There was science involved in that decision. And I think eventually our governments will get back to re-looking at that and say there was no way that Supreme Court justices with no background in this knew what was not yet discovered because it was going to happen at the University of Michigan in the year 2001. There's no way they knew any of that stuff. And they're going to have to at some point come back and revisit and say, wait a minute, what have we learned? And it'll be no surprise to those of us who are believers to see that the science matched what we feel the Bible and God had been leading us to believe all along. Not a shock at all to me. I wasn't surprised in the slightest. So one of the things that I think is important, and Deborah alluded to some of the things happening at the state level, one of the most disappointing signatures I think my governor has put on anything since he's been elected. But one of the things we need to understand is the debate here is, when do those human rights begin? At what point does that unique life have protections? And we understand that there are some there. You'll see governments that say, if you commit, for example, vehicular manslaughter and you're drunk driving and you kill a pregnant woman and you kill the unborn child, you've committed 2 murders. And it seems like common sense, right? You denied 2 human lives the chance to keep on going. But then we turn around on some of these other things, like referring out for abortions, like my wife would potentially be required to do. And we say, well, no, that doesn't count. Now we don't believe that anymore. So that's where the debate is here, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let anybody fool you into believing there should be some sort of debate as to when human life begins. We know that. The science is done. It's established. Now it's a matter of making our laws and our government officials catch up to that reality. Because what's happening is they're wanting to put their own biases and beliefs and adjust those things and pick and choose when we're going to defend a human life, when we're going to deal with that. Because it is complicated. Don't get me wrong. When does that life have the right to property? When does it have various other rights? It's a question that should be asked. But the core question is, when does it have the right to life? The most basic human right any of us have. When does it have the right to life? And I would argue to you and anyone that also was solved at the University of Michigan, back there at the turn of the millennium. You have the right to life as soon as your unique human life is established. As soon as we can sit there and tell you, well, they're going to have blue eyes, but they're not going to have blonde hair, they're going to have some brownish hair, and they're going to have, be susceptible to a heart attack at the age of 37. By the time you know all of that about a unique human life, ladies and gentlemen, the question has been answered. That human life has the right to life. And we can debate about what, when, and if the other rights are going to come. We're not going to let them drink alcohol until they're 21. We're not going to let them drive until they're 16. We can debate when of all those things are going to happen. But there should be no debate as to when they have the right to life. As soon as they have established their own unique identity, that is when it begins. So I won't take more of your time than that. I just wanted to share that. But I've always thought that was very interesting from my perspective. I got to be there while that was happening at the University of Michigan. And from then on, anytime anybody tried to bring to me this discussion of, well, is it a human being? What is it? Is it, all this list they try to say of things it could be. Is it part of the mother's body? Is it all this other stuff? No, it's done. That's been answered. And to no one's surprise who's a believer, it was answered in a way that we all knew would make sense. So please leave with that thought. There is no question as to when human life begins. The question is, when are we going to start giving the rights that they deserve? When are we going to force our governments, our society, to recognize that, look, we know the answers to some of these things you're claiming we don't answer, and we need to take another look at it. And we need to not force, for example, nurses and doctors to refer out to end that human life against their conscience. I mean, I find it kind of horrific that in a bill that's supposed to defend your ethics and your right to conscience, that they put in something that would so violently go against the conscience of my wife or the medical director of that clinic, that so much so that they can't even continue to practice and are unwilling to, if you're going to put them into a position where they're going to be forced to end a human life. That is where we need to make sure we are talking, putting pressure, where we are making sure our voice is heard, that we as a society do not find that conscionable, we don't find it ethical, and we won't stand for it. So thank you very much again for having me out. I hope I didn't bore you too much with the science, but it always fascinated me, and I think it's something you all should know if anyone tries to bring that debate up to you. Well, we don't believe this is a human life. Say, I'm sorry. You know, you cannot believe in gravity as well, but I wouldn't go jump off a cliff if I were you. I just wouldn't do it. So thank you very much, and thank you for this gathering and giving us the opportunity to come out and talk. Thank you.
Hang on just one second. We have a couple of things for you as well. And you know, just in the thought of people and positions, I really appreciate meeting you today for the first time. But I also appreciate the words that you shared that are so important for people, I think, in authority to speak with. And so maybe Yahweh has put you in a place like that so that you can be a light and you can help guide people. I think that's very relevant testimony. So thanks again for that.